Good morning. Nice to see you all after a long gap. Now we are in the USA visiting our daughters. From here, we had the opportunity to go to South Carolina on a holiday for 6 days, and I thought of sharing some information with you all as it was very interesting for me. And after the 3 years, actually, we are visiting our daughters due to COVID situation. And here I should mention that my son-in-law, who is a scholar, always does a lot of research before arranging a visit to a place. He sees to that it is just not a picnic spot but also has some history and value and culture behind it. And he also plans minute by minute activities and a nice place to stay and also to get us at least one Indian meal per day as we cannot survive without it. And here, this visit to South Carolina, we covered three places. One was Charleston, second was Beaufort, and the third was Savannah in Georgia state. First, let me talk some interesting things which you saw in Charleston. The Charleston, it is associated with the United States history because it is connected to slavery. Here, the slavery was rampant, and the state seceded from the Union because the Abraham Lincoln was having anti-slavery policies, and so Carolina seceded and declared it as a republic in 1860, and some other states also followed it, and they formed a confederate. And here the first place what we saw was Fort Sumter, which was built on an artificial island, and where the Union militia was placed. And then the Confederate Army attacked them, and within 34 hours, this Fort Sumter surrendered. And though it was a failure for the Union, later on it led to the Civil War. So the first shot was fired here, which triggered the Civil War later, which killed so many thousands of people. And then the slavery was ended after that. And here every day the Union flag is being unfurled and hoisted in the morning around 9 o'clock, and then it is again brought back around 5 p.m. And see the first ferry to go there, we had the opportunity to see the hoisting of the flag of United States, and it was very interesting. Now let me share some interesting facts of Fort Sumter along with the pictures. This is the Fort Sumter, the national monument, which we had to take a ferry to reach the place from the harbor of Charleston. It took around an hour to reach the place, to reach the fort. The ferry ride itself was very enjoyable with the cool breeze on your face. So there it was written when we reached the fort, we were given 1 hour and 15 minutes to go around the entire fort, but that was sufficient to go through that. So when was it built and how the Union militia was placed there, and when was the first shot fired at 4:30 a.m., which led to the Civil War, everything was written there, and I'm sharing some pictures with you. Though the Union militia surrendered, Abraham Lincoln declared that though Fort Sumter has fallen, we will never give up, we will never turn back, we will abolish slavery. So that is a determination he took, and that got him the victory later on. And then the slavery was abolished because of Civil War, though so many precious lives were lost. But the inhuman practice of slavery was abolished because of the firm stand he took. And here are some of the pictures of Fort Sumter when we visited. I'm just sharing with you, and who are the people involved in that, and how Abraham Lincoln declared, and about the walls of the fort which were bombarded by the cannons, that is also being shown. And then the Declaration of Abraham Lincoln, which was issued by him, is also written. And then how the Union flag was hoisted when we went there, since we were the first to land on the fort that day. They involved us also as volunteers, and we had the pleasure of holding the flag of USA. It was a beautiful sight, and you can also see that how it goes up, such a big flag on a big pillar, and under the pillar was engraved the name of Robert Anderson, who fought on the side of the Union militia to safeguard the fort. His name was engraved there. You can also see that in the pillar. This way, our visit to Fort Sumter gave us a glimpse of US history. The second day, we visited two plantations. One was Dayton Hall, and the second was a Middleton Plantation. Both are very popular over there, so we visited both of them. The Drayton Hall was a very huge area and which was developed by John Drayton in 1738 or so, I heard. And then it had a very beautiful mansion of the plantation owners, and then surrounded by a lot of areas where they grew indigo and rice. For growing rice, they did not have the knowledge, so they brought slaves from West Africa like Angola, Ghana, etc., who were expert in growing rice. And with the help of these slaves, they developed their plantation and they earned a lot of profit. But the working condition of the slaves was pathetic here, and they lived in very unhygienic conditions, and they worked almost 20 hours per day, and they were given just one dress per year, we heard. The two very cheap sack-like thing, very thick cloth. And then, so this is another place connected with the slavery of USA. So I thought of sharing with you. Let me show the pictures and explain it further. This is a beautiful Drayton Hall with lot of greenery and also beautiful gardens. And the funniest thing that happened was there was a designer pond. Near that there was an alligator, and we thought this alligator is just a decorative piece was to bring the effect to the pond. But at the end of the pond there was a small board, and then it was written, please don't try to feed the alligator or go near them and disturb them, they may attack you. Oh, we got so scared of them. There were two like that, and they were not even moving, so we thought they are just dolls. We are standing in front of the mansion in Drayton Plantation. Here we are seeing the pictures of the mansion. At the two sides they had kitchen and stable, etc. And the middle brown building is a place where the mansion owners stayed. That was a beautiful building with all excellent furniture, porcelain sets, etc. This is the inner view of one of the rooms which had huge windows. The purpose of this window was, we were told, that the mansion owners can supervise the work being done by the slaves so that they can keep an eye on their functioning. Second one what we visited was Middleton Plantation, which was owned by one person called John William, and then his son-in-law Henry Middleton, he got it from him because he married his daughter, and then he developed it further. And this was also built on Ashley River, just like the Dayton Hall. And here also they grew rice and indigo, and they used slave labor and they exploited them to the maximum. So both the plantations are the living examples of the slavery that existed in USA, and also the best examples of the architecture during their time. Now let us enjoy this Middleton Plantation. Similar to Drayton Hall Plantation, Middleton was also along the Ashley River, which was making their lands very fertile. The swampy lands were being used for the growth of rice and indigo with the help of slave labor, which they brought from West Africa. And the condition of the slaves was so bad that even the names were changed. Their original names were not known to the owner, so they gave them just Henry I, Henry II, like that, whatever came to their mouth. So the slaves lost their cultural identity, their living original place, everything. And this is the inside of the Middleton Plantation. There was a very old tree there, which is around 1000 years old. And the speciality of South Carolina is lot of Spanish moss. And then we were told that the Spanish moss doesn't act like a parasite on the living tree. It takes the food from the atmosphere, from the moisture, from the humidity, and it can thrive for so many years without food. So this was the biggest tree what we saw in the plantation. Apart from that, there were beautiful ponds also there, and it was all along the Ashley River. These are some of the rooms of the slave quarters. and where they were making some tools, etc., and how they were packing the rice. That was very interesting when we heard from the person who was packing. They used to make big barrels, and then inside they used to insert bamboo strips which are dried, and then they used to fill it up with rice and then make it tight with the help of iron bands. So the workshop was there where they demonstrated all these things. It was very interesting. We also saw a stable and then the places where they lived, etc. It was a very wonderful trip. Here also there were designer ponds, and we were alert enough to see the sign alligators, be careful, like that. After enjoying this, we went on a city tour of Charleston. It was a 2 hour guided tour, but still we enjoyed walking all the way. Some of the roads were like this, made up of big stones brought from the seashore. Though the roads were so bumpy, it was a different experience, but the cars found it very difficult to go through that. Only some selected roads were like this so as to show their cultural identity, and it was nice to see for a difference. And then we walked and saw all the houses that were so beautiful. Most of them are of Palladian architecture, and every house had a very beautiful, cute garden that can be seen from the gate itself. So the tour guide showed us various houses from outside where every house garden was very different and it was enchanting. We enjoyed that. And then on the tour we saw a big church, St. Michael's Church, where it was told that George Washington came and prayed. And then we saw different type of architecture, and one street was called the Rainbow Street because every building in that street was painted in different colors. So it was mainly focusing on the architecture of Charleston and then about the flora and fauna of Charleston, and it was very interesting. And the weather was as usual in USA, it was chilly. We had to wear jackets, etc. That was the only thing. Otherwise, the tour was so good. So here we can see one of the gardens of a house. See how beautifully they have maintained, and the flora and fauna which are kept outside the houses only, and they had very different types of houses painted in different colors. And the beauty of the church also can be seen with the help of this picture. There are many churches, and this was very oldest we heard, and the Palladian architecture can also be seen in the arches and the windows. That was a speciality of Charleston. So you keep enjoying the architecture as and when the picture is being shown, and then the stoned streets, and many of them had brick walled structure. Again here also we had lot of Spanish moss trees, which is typical of Carolina. And see this building, this was also very old, we heard, and many multicolored buildings were there. Just keep enjoying seeing the buildings and the beautiful gardens on the stone built roads. I'm just showing you the different houses which we enjoyed on the way, and some of the oldest churches. Some churches we are allowed to go in. Here we found an interesting feature. The lower windows had some extra protection than the upper one. Like that we kept on watching different types of houses and the gardens and the beauty of Charleston. We enjoyed only by walking in the streets of Charleston. And the last stop she took us was a beautiful church, St. Michael's, and she also showed us the interior of the church. It was such a beautiful structure inside, and the chandeliers which were also there was very nice. And then we heard that there George Washington also came to pray there. You can also enjoy a view of the interior of the church, and there was a big organ. The tour ended in a park where they had kept a statue of George Washington. Our tour guide suggested that we could visit one of the houses in Charleston if you want to get the feel of the mansions during that time. So we decided to visit a house called the Red House. That was also another beautiful example of the architecture of the time, and also it showed the position of the slaves during that time, how much they worked and what was their position, what kind of labor they were doing, etc. We could guess from their position there. So, this was a kitchen where they used to work for more than 20 hours, we heard, and a carriage house and a stable. A lot of interesting things were there. It was actually reflecting the poor condition of the slaves who were brought from West Africa and toiled for their owners by losing their cultural identity and their original country, etc. And they had worked for the mansion owners for them to thrive. And this is the front. In the middle, what we see is the house owners' mansion, and they could see how the slaves are working from their rooms, and their rooms were made up very nicely and with rich furniture and paintings and porcelain, etc. Whereas the slaves' quarters was looking in a very bad condition, and they had rooms above the stable in small small rooms. So many of them were forced to live, and this is the artistic room of the mansion owners. Thus, it shows what type of, this is one of the slave quarters. They can't even sleep properly as they have to be ready whenever the house owner calls them. On the streets, we found some Gallaguchi culture women from Africa, those who came and settled down here, making some handmade bamboo products and selling. It was similar to our Indian products. Thus, we ended our Charleston tour with a happy note, and then we started proceeding to a Beaufort the next day, which I'll share in the next video. Thank you for watching my video.